Far within a dense forest, a dragon lived peacefully inside a cave alongside a single precious egg. Then one morning, she left her nest to search for food so there would be something ready for her hatchling when it emerged. Unfortunately, the moment she soared into the sky, a group of human hunters spotted her and struck her down before she had any chance to escape. With the dragon gone, the cave and the egg were left completely unprotected. Not long afterward, a pregnant magical cat wandered through the area and discovered the empty cave. Seeing that nobody remained to claim it, she decided to make the place her new home. Soon, the cat gave birth to several kittens inside the cave. While she was busy caring for her newborn children, the abandoned dragon egg suddenly cracked open and hatched. The young dragon's first sight was the cat standing over him, so he naturally assumed she was his mother. The cat immediately realized that the strange-looking hatchling was definitely not one of her own offspring. Even so, she couldn't bring herself to abandon him. Raising youngsters from other species was an unfamiliar territory for her, as she had cared for outsiders before. Believing she could handle the challenge, she welcomed the baby dragon into the family and informed her kittens that they now had a brand new little brother. Sometime later, the mother cat brought all of her children along on a hunting trip so they could learn important survival skills. While moving quietly through the tall grass, they spotted several mice gathered around a patch of berries. Seizing the opportunity, the cat carefully stalked her prey before launching herself forward and catching multiple mice in a single attack. After the hunt, she began teaching her kittens how to channel lightning magic through their tails. The young cats picked up the technique surprisingly fast. However, when the dragon attempted to copy them, absolutely nothing happened. Seeing how disappointed he was, the cat and her children decided to help him discover what abilities he possessed instead. After experimenting with several possibilities, they eventually learned that the dragon could use his wings to fly and release fire from his mouth. His control over these talents was still rough, but at least he finally knew where his strengths lay. Just then, the mother cat sensed danger approaching nearby, so she immediately instructed all of her children to stay silent and hide among the bushes. Afterward, a group of humans passed through the area. Fortunately, none of them noticed the hidden family. The youngsters, however, were confused by their mother's reaction because they had never encountered creatures like those before and couldn't understand why she seemed so cautious. The mom cat explained that those beings were called humans, and according to her, they were among the most frightening creatures in existence. Some humans could be incredibly compassionate, while others displayed unimaginable cruelty. The worst part was that there was no reliable way to tell which kind one might encounter, and because magical cats like them were considered valuable by humans, getting spotted could lead to serious trouble. The young ones finally understood that humans were no joke, so they began training themselves to remember the smell of mankind, hoping they could stay far away from them for the rest of their lives. And after seeing how focused and determined her children had become, the mom cat felt certain they would be ready to protect themselves when the time eventually came for them to leave the cave and wander into the outside world. For a while, life continued peacefully for the cat family. But a few days later, while they were out hunting, a glowing magic circle suddenly formed beneath the mother's paws. Her children panicked and asked what was happening as her body slowly began fading away, but the mother immediately understood the situation. There was no way to escape it because this was a summoning circle created by humans. Whenever a human attempted to summon a familiar, the magic would randomly drag a creature from somewhere in the wild. And by pure rotten luck, the mom cat had been selected this time. So before she vanished completely, she left her children with one final lesson. She had already taught them everything they needed to know about hunting, so if danger ever found them, she wanted them to protect each other, rely on one another, and work together whenever survival demanded it. Then the mother was teleported away, and her children were left behind to survive without her. As the years passed, the older cats eventually moved out of the cave one by one, until the dragon became the only one still living there. He had fully adapted to life in the wild, but with all his siblings gone, he could not help feeling painfully alone, because there was no one left for him to play with, talk to, or spend his days beside. A long time passed with the dragon living by himself like that, until one day his older sister and her husband finally returned to the cave. She was pregnant and had come back looking for a safe place where she could give birth and raise her children. The dragon was overjoyed and quickly became the fun uncle to his little nephews and nieces. He taught them everything his mom had once taught him, from the basics of hunting to the most important rule of all, which was to never get anywhere near humans. But before he even realized it, those kittens had grown up too, and they eventually left the cave to build lives and families of their own. Watching them mature and become capable of surviving on their own made him genuinely happy, but he would have been lying if he said it did not hurt to be abandoned by silence all over again. Since a dragon's life lasts far longer than a cat's, he slowly understood that he would most likely outlive every sibling he had ever known, and that thought weighed heavily on his heart. But then, before he could sink too deep into that loneliness, an unfamiliar cat appeared near the cave, and as she came closer, the dragon noticed that her scent was strangely similar to one of his siblings. The cat stepped forward and introduced herself, explaining to the dragon that she was expecting kittens and desperately needed somewhere safe to deliver them. She told him that her father had once spoken about his own brother, describing him as a cat with wings, and he had always said that if she ever needed protection, This cave would be the safest place she could go. When the dragon heard that his brother had trusted him so deeply, his eyes immediately filled with happy tears. As the years passed, the dragon became even larger and far more powerful. He mastered stronger forms of magic and eventually gained the ability to speak with the spirits that naturally lived throughout the forest. Then one day, while chatting with one of those spirits, he casually referred to himself as a cat with wings. The spirit was completely confused by that statement, so it gently explained that he was not a cat at all. This completely stunned the dragon because his mother had vanished before she ever had the chance to tell him the truth. So he returned to his cave and told his nieces and nephews that he was not actually a cat like he had always believed. But they honestly did not care even a little, because they had figured that out a long time ago, especially since he was already about 20 times bigger than them. Instead, they simply asked if he could keep teaching them magic, since they were really enjoying it, and the dragon happily agreed. Life stayed peaceful for a while after that, but one day, as the dragon was flying back home, he suddenly noticed a group of humans standing near a pile of dead cats. The moment he realized that some of those cats were members of his own family, rage exploded inside him. Without hesitating, he dove straight toward the humans and burned them into ash with one blast of fire. At first, he could not understand why humans would slaughter so many cats at once if they were only hunting for food, but the spirits soon told him the ugly truth. The humans had never planned to eat them. They were killing the cats only to strip off their fur and sell it afterward. Once the dragon learned that, his anger became even worse. If the humans had killed them for food, he might have accepted it as part of the natural cycle, because every living creature has to survive somehow. But murdering cats just so some worthless idiots could make money from their fur was something he would never forgive. So he immediately flew to the city those damn hunters had come from, landed on top of their city wall, and declared himself the guardian of every magic cat living in the forest. He announced that the hunters who had gone out that morning to kill cats had already been burned to nothing by his flames. Then he warned the entire town that if anyone ever entered the forest to hunt cats again, he would burn their whole city down until nothing but ash remained. The humans froze in terror as the city's knights lifted their lightning staves and fired crackling bolts toward the dragon, hoping to bring the beast down. But no matter how many shivvy attacks they launched, not a single blast even marked his freaking scales. If anything, their pathetic attempt only made his anger burn hotter than before. So the dragon struck back, scorching part of the city and incinerating the soldiers who had dared to point their weapons at him. At first, he had only planned to warn the humans and leave, but after they attacked him, he seriously began thinking about wiping their entire city off the map. But while he was glaring down at the burning streets, he noticed a young girl sobbing in the middle of the flames. At first, he felt absolutely nothing for her because in his eyes, humans were nothing but rotten trash. Then a small cat stepped out from behind the girl and stood in front of her, trying to protect her from danger. That sight immediately brought back the words his mother had once taught him. Some humans were cruel, but others were gentle and kind. And in that moment, the dragon understood that destroying every kind of human because of the wicked ones would be unjust. So he rose into the sky and gave the city one last warning. From that day forward, no human was allowed to kill cats in the forest unless it was for food or true self-defense, and anything beyond that would bring his rage upon them. After delivering his warning, the dragon returned to the forest. Years passed peacefully after that, and the humans learned to obey the new rule so they would never provoke the dragon again. Then one quiet night, after the young prince of the human kingdom had been put to bed, he slipped out of his chamber under the cover of darkness. He wanted to practice magic alone, where no one could watch him fail. The prince had been born with very weak magical talent, and if he ever hoped to inherit the throne and meet his father's expectations, he had to train harder than everyone else. But when he tried casting a simple fire spell to burn a single leaf, nothing happened at all, proving just how terrible he still was at magic. Even so, the prince refused to give up and kept trying again and again. Eventually, the cat wandered over and sat beside him, and just seeing it lifted his spirits a little. Feeling encouraged, the prince attempted the spell one more time, and this time he actually managed to ignite the leaf. He was overjoyed by his small success and happily thanked the cat for supporting him. But then he suddenly realized that this was not an ordinary cat. It was one of the magical cats from the forest. During his lessons, he had been warned that if one of those cats ever entered the city, no one was allowed to hurt or kill it, because if they did, the imperial dragon would return and burn the entire city to ashes. After remembering that warning, the prince becomes much more careful, so he asks the cat if it came from the forest. Once the cat confirms it, he offers to guide it back, but the cat says it already knows the way home and turns around to leave. Because of that, the prince assumes everything should be fine. Yet the very next day, the cat returns to the palace to see him again and help him with his training. Since the cat is surprisingly friendly, it does not take long for the two of them to become close friends, and from then on, they meet every night to practice magic and talk. Eventually, the king finds out about their secret meetings, and at first he becomes deeply worried because he fears the dragon might misunderstand the situation and think they are keeping the cat there against its will, which could make him come back and destroy the city. But at the same time, when the dragon first appeared, he had been reasonable enough to give them 2 warnings instead of immediately wiping them out, so the king believes things should be fine as long as they explain the truth properly. Before long, the dragon descends into the city, instantly throwing the townspeople into chaos because everyone assumes he has returned to burn them all to ashes. But in reality, the dragon has only come to search for one of his kittens, who has not returned to the forest for several days. A short time later, the cat finally comes out, and the dragon immediately demands to know why it has been away from home for so long. The cat explains that it made friends with a child who lives in the city, and since that child is awful at magic, it wants to stay and teach him. The dragon reminds the cat that he already warned him that humans are dangerous and that he should keep his distance from them. But the cat argues back, saying his friend is not dangerous at all. And when the prince appears in front of him, the dragon can tell right away that the boy does not have even the slightest trace of danger in him. Because of that, he agrees to let the cat stay and teach him. But since the boy is the prince of this kingdom, the dragon believes it is only proper to ask the king's permission before allowing one of his cats to live there permanently. So he uses transformation magic to shrink himself into a small cat form, making himself far less terrifying, and then begins walking toward the castle. When he reaches the main hall, the king welcomes him as an honored guest and naturally has no problem with one of the dragon's cats staying in the kingdom. Still, he asks whether the dragon is truly comfortable with this, since he was the one who taught the cats magic, and the spells they use could easily be considered a hidden art. The dragon says there is no issue because most of it is just knowledge he picked up from speaking with the spirits. To him, it is nothing secret. But in truth, the dragon is the only one in the area capable of communicating with those spirits in the first place, meaning this is knowledge no ordinary person could ever obtain. Even so, since the dragon has no objections, it is officially decided that the cat may remain in the kingdom and teach the prince for as long as he wishes. From that date onward, whenever a new royal child was born, a cat from the forest would eventually visit the kingdom. And if that cat became friends with the prince or princess, it would teach them magic and remain by their side. Thanks to this tradition, the bond between the humans, the cats, and the dragon stayed perfectly balanced for generations. This was the end of episode 1. Subscribe to not miss the next episode.